We're talking about music on the Jim Ferguson Sunday Show. Music. It can take you on a fantasy trip or into reality, build you up or bring you down. Sometimes the same song can do both to different people. It's an interesting matter of interpretation. The Who's record, Can't Live With You, Can't Live Without You, is a good case in point. And Bob, you were saying?
Well, I made the statement that I felt that there was more reality in that song than there was one like Mac Davis and Boogie Woogie Mommy and the Blue Suede Shoes and all that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
And then you explained to me your position, see, why you made the statement, and really I have to agree with your point, in the song.
Right. Now, what we're going to do, I played the Who's new record. Now, artistically, earlier, and we're going to do this for those that may just be joining us, earlier played the new Who release of Seems Like I Can't Live With You, But I Can't Live Without You. And I said, artistically, I thought it was, it's a tremendous record, but philosophically, I thought was a difficult concept to utilize or live by, and they say in the record, it's like when something happens, that's the way it's going to be forever and ever, and time, never changes it. And I can't quite accept that, because that would mean that, in anyone's life, if something happened that was bad, then the remainder of their life would be that way, and hopefully that's not the case. And Bob, you said that you've had a change now?
Well, on that point, I have to agree with you that, things possibly can get better, but really, in this song, in my opinion, it's laughs, see, because, it's just, if you listen to the words real close, they're just talking about love, because there's people that women and men both that just stand by and let their love slip away, so they don't care. And this happens to some people 2, 3, 4, 5 times.
Right, but now what happens if somebody stands by and sees their love slip away? Don't you think that it's already slipped away?
Well, if he... Yeah, right.
Because if you really care, you're not going to let that happen.
Well,
I wouldn't think.
Yeah.
So I think maybe it's already slipped away. So maybe what we have is a person that just occasionally slips into love, but usually is not in love. And unfortunately, whomever they fall in love with is more consistent than that, and they're left standing there, in love by themselves. Mm-hmm. Okay, thanks for calling, Bob.
All right.
Appreciate it.
Yeah, thank you.
Mary, did you have a comment?
Yes, well, I think that music is really a lot easier to understand today, since there isn't, at any rate on stations like WHAS, so much music is played by people who are deliberately trying to keep people from misunderstanding the songs. Now, there are some really rough songs that have been out that people will deliberately mix things together in such a way that their words will be distorted.
Can you think of an example?
Well, I can't think of an example of particularly deliberate distortion, except in, I think there are certain acid rock type numbers. I think the Rolling Stones have done this a bit. There are some songs where, I don't know, just maybe the musicians, maybe you can understand all but one line.
Uh-huh.
And that can really be rather strange. And then, of course, there are the freaky people who like to record backward. Like the Beatles in Rain.
Right, or the Beatles used to do.
Yes, right. And about the interpretation of the song, you seem to be having a sad trend this afternoon. Why is that? I mean, first the Gordon Lightfoot about the rainy day people, and then...
But, we get back to the interpretation of music. And in Rainy Day People, I think that's a very up song, really, because he has affixed a title to a type of person or people, namely Rainy Day People.
Yes.
But what I get out of that song is that he's talking about people that are there when you have problems, when you have a problem, you would go to a rainy day person, and that person is a person that has had this problem, or is familiar with the problem, and you can talk to him,
Right, but even in the process of sympathizing or empathizing, there can be a great deal of depression.
Oh, sure, but it's better to face it than not.
Well, yes, I'm not denying that.
And it's a lot easier to face it with someone else, that has been there or that is aware of it.
Oh, yes, but you get a lot more happiness built up out of a song like, for example, Bridge Over Troubled Water, which tries to convey the same idea in a way, if I understand your meaning of Rainy Day People.
Well, I have an excellent suggestion. Why don't we go back and we'll listen to Rainy Day People, and we'll sort of dissect it. What do you think about that?
Very good idea.
Rainy day people always seem to know when it's time to call. Rainy day lovers don't hide love inside, they just pass it on.
Gordon Lightfoot, Rainy Day People. Susan, you were saying?
Just that sometimes, quite often in songs, I can't understand all of the words. I can usually get the general gist, but I'll try it, listen 3 or 4 times to a song to figure out what one particular phrase is.
Yeah.
And I can't for the life of me figure it out.
Can you understand, is it that you can't understand the words or you can't understand the phrase?
Well, what they're, the words, what they're saying.
I see. Well, we talked about that earlier, and that's in the mix. And what happens in a session, recording session today, is that it used to be that an artist would come in with his band, and they would all sit down and do their thing at one time. And there would be like 30 mics in a studio, and everybody would be mic'd, and they would record it in one take on one track, and that would be the master. And then in the industry, they started coming up with multi-track recording devices. And so that meant that instead of having to do it all at once, and considering the probabilities of everybody doing a perfect piece in the song, they could do it segmentally or track by track. Listen, in other words, they would lay what's called a rhythm track, or just the basic beat on one track, and then they would back that up and listen to that and record on another track the next piece of business, whether it's a guitar solo or whatever. And it's in a form like constructing a song where they keep laying tracks and tracks and tracks until, depending on how involved it is, maybe 8 tracks, 16. They have 32s. They even have 60-track recorders. But anyway, they can build it like building blocks, and it still gets back even after they have all the tracks and they have them all perfect. And many of those tracks, it takes 10, maybe 15 tries to get just that exact thing that they wanted. But it gets down to the final thing, which is a mix. And today, everything is mixed either like quad, 4-channel, 2-channel, and it gets it depends on the producer. All right, he is in charge. You have an engineer, which actually does the physical mixing, but the producer determines exactly how loud the lyrics are in relation to the music. And sometimes after you hear a song over and over and over and over and over again, which the producer does, he knows the words,
Right.
He even if he didn't hear them, he would know the words,
Yeah.
So I think sometimes he forgets that other people have never had the opportunity of hearing what's called a rough mix, which is the lyric is way up front and the background is way down, and you're just listening to the correctness of the lead vocalist, say. All right. They haven't had that opportunity to hear it in the clear, as it was, and know what the words are supposed to be. So then when the mix comes, he doesn't want to leave the lead vocal, what's called naked, or way up above the background. The background instrumentation is supposed to give body to the lead vocalist, to give the lead vocalist more strength and to emphasize what the lead vocal is doing, you know. And so when he mixes it down, I think the tendency is to bury it.
Drowned it.
Yeah, trying to get that background up enough to give the lead vocal body and additional punch.
Right.
So I think that may be part of the problem that we're having today. And there's another thing too, and that is when you take a stereo mix and you come down, like dub it down to mono, or you're listening on a mono phonograph, when the two stereo channels combine, a phenomena occurs which is called additive effect, and that is that, well, in stereo, the left and the right are one thing. When you combine them together monorally, some of the things will add, and others won't. And if your background adds and your lead vocal doesn't, then again you have that thing of the lead vocal is buried back down, you know, under. So I think that's part of the problem that we're having today in not being able to understand the lead vocal.
Yeah, I think another thing too probably is they're so interested, maybe not in this particular song, but in creating new musical effects, using different instruments, different ways that they've never been used before, that they don't really care that much about the words.
Right, and also that in some cases lyrics are used only almost like an instrument.
Right.
You know, that it is you play the lead vocal just like you would a guitar. That it's there not necessarily for the words, but just for the effect of the vocal. I think Janis Joplin did a lot of that, to where it wasn't what she was saying, but how she was saying it that made the song. Susie, thanks for calling. Okay.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye. We have been searching for a particular recorded song by Helen Reddy called Angie Baby. This is back into our thing of talking about music, you know, and lyrics of music. And I want you to listen now, people, to the words of this song very closely now. And I'd like for you to give me your interpretation of what the song's all about, okay?
You live your life in the songs you hear on the rock and roll radio. Well,
discussing music this afternoon on the Jim Ferguson Show. Barb, you were talking about Helen Reddy's Angie Baby?
Yes. Well, I tell you, I just feel like she spells out pretty clearly in the record that this gal has an emotional disorder. You know, the folks say to take her out of school, and she starts to live in a fantasy world, where she imagines everything. Well, then in the second part of the record, I think you can understand it fairly well. But then, when the neighborhood boy enters into it, to me, at that point, it becomes sort of a science fiction type of thing. You know, because it comes out in the headlines of the paper, boy disappears, you know, no trace of him, what have you. It's sort of like the electronic waves have absorbed him, you know.
Or perhaps she ceased living in a fantasy world and really did him in.
Well, now that's true, but it says that she has this radio by her side and someone who satisfies her whenever she wants. I don't.
Maybe the boy's in her closet or something.
Well, I just think he's electronically absorbed, and upon demand, she can just call him forth, you know.
I see. That's an interesting concept.
Well, just a thought, you know.